Windhelm is one of Skyrim's oldest and most imposing cities, a fortress of stone and snow, ruled by Jarl Ulfric Stormcloak and steeped in the tension of the Civil War. But beneath its political strife lies another kind of darkness, one that has nothing to do with armies or kings. Walk through the Grey Quarter, past the frost-bitten alleys and suspicious guards, and you may hear it, the whisper of the people. He's performing the Black Sacrament, they say. That Arantino boy, he's trying to summon the Dark Brotherhood. At the heart of this rumour sits a small, unassuming house. Its shutters are closed, its doors locked, its windows unlit. Inside, the air is thick with dread. A single child kneels before a bloody altar, chanting the words of murder. This is the Arantino residence, the most sinister place in all of Skyrim. Not because of what he has done there, but because of what it represents. Grief, fear, innocence corrupted, and the echo of one of Tamriel's darkest traditions. To understand more about the Arantino residence, one must first understand Windhelm. Windhelm is not merely a city, it is a statement. It is Skyrim's oldest capital, founded by Ysgramor himself. And every stone of it seems to remember its violence. Its people are proud, stubborn, and divided. The Nords dominate the upper quarter, whilst the Dark Elves are confined to the Grey Quarter, forced to endure cold, prejudice, and colder winters. Amid this political and racial tension, Windhelm breeds silence. Its streets are lined with suspicion, its alleys with whispers. The people gossip about war, murder, and the mysterious disappearances that seem to haunt the province. The Arantino residence stands in this city like a festering wound, an abandoned home turned shrine to death. In a city built on old blood, this small house feels like a beating heart of its cruelty. Inside the residence lives a boy, Aventus Arantino. Orphaned after the death of his mother, he was sent to the Honor Hall orphanage in Ridden, where he suffered under the cruel care of Grelod the Kind, a name soaked in irony. Her abuse and neglect left deep scars on the children, but none more than Aventus. When he escaped, he returned to Windhelm, his home, determined to do what no child should ever consider, to summon the assassins of the Dark Brotherhood. The Black Sacrament requires a ritual, a human heart, nightshade, candles, and a skull. The supplicant must kneel before these tokens and whisper the name of their intended victim, begging the Night Mother to send her children to kill. And so Aventus, a child barely 10 years old, performed the ritual of murder in his family's home, alone. The act is horrifying not because of blood or gore, but because of what it says about Skyrim's world. A land so cruel that even a child believes death is the only form of justice. The Black Sacrament is one of the most sinister elements in the Elder Scrolls universe. It's simply not a contract, it's a prayer to death itself. The ritual is ancient, born from the cult of the Night Mother, the spectral matron of the Dark Brotherhood. To perform it is to invite evil into one's home willingly, to ask for murder as though it were mercy. In Aventus's case, it's both. His words, sweet mother, send your child into me," are chilling not because they came from a killer, but because they come from a child. The innocence of the voice collides with the horror of the act. The Arantino residence then is not merely sinister because of what happens there, it's sinister because of what it means. That Skyrim is a world where a grieving boy can speak to gods of death and the gods will answer. Stepping into the Arantino residence is one of Skyrim's most atmospheric experiences. The moment you cross the threshold, you feel it. The air grows heavy and the silence becomes oppressive. Dust coats the furniture, cobwebs hang from the corners. The place feels like time has stopped. And then you see the ritual, the skull, the candles, the blood. Aventus kneels before it, repeating the Black Sacrament over and over, his voice trembling yet determined. No music plays, no wind howls, just the voice of a child praying for a death. In that moment, the player is not facing a dragon or a dragger. They are facing something far worse: the collapse of innocence. That is what makes the Artino residence the most sinister place in Skyrim. It feels real, and it feels human. Understanding why Aventus turned to the Black Sacrament, one must also understand his target, Grelod the Kind. At the Honor Hall Orphanage, Grelod runs her institution with cruelty, masked as discipline. The children cower before her. She belittles them, starves them, and crushes their spirits. Her abuse is not physical alone, it is emotional and psychological. And yet, in the eyes of Skyrim's law, she has done nothing wrong. No guards come to investigate, no Jarl intervenes. Aventus's plea, then, is not just for vengeance, it's for justice in a world where this has failed. The Artino residence becomes a courtroom of one, where a child becomes both judge and supplicant, begging a dark god to right the wrongs that mortal law ignores. It's easy to condemn Aventus's actions, but in the world of Skyrim, his choice makes sense. That moral complexity is what makes his home feel so cursed. When the Dragonborn enters the Artino residence, they become part of this story. Aventus mistakes the player for a member of the Dark Brotherhood, and without hesitation he offers gold and begs for Grelod's death. He is not afraid, he is desperate. The player can agree, leave, or refuse, but the damage is already done. The act of murder has been set in motion. Whether the Dragonborn chose to carry out the contract or not, the Artino residence has already fulfilled its purpose. By entering that house, the player bears witness to the darkest kind of tragedy, a child's faith not in gods of light, but in gods of death. Windhelm's people gossip about the Artino boy, with fear and disgust, calling him cursed, yet none of them helped him. None took him in after his mother died. None spoke out when the orphanage mistreated him. Their fear of the supernatural outweighs their sense of compassion. In this way, Windhelm itself becomes part of the curse. The city allows the conditions that drive Aventus to his ritual. It turns away from suffering and then recoils at the monster it creates. The Artino residence is thus a mirror held up to Windhelm's soul, a reflection of its apathy, prejudice, and decay. At its heart, the story of this residence is about innocence twisted into something unrecognizable. Aventus's ritual isn't performed out of malice, it's performed out of faith. He believes truly and completely that the gods of death can save him where the gods of life cannot. This preservation of faith is what makes this scene so powerful. In Skyrim, the 9 divines are often silent. The Daedric princes are active, manipulative, and cruel. Aventus, in his desperation, chose the only gods who seemed to answer prayers, the wrong ones. And in that moment, his house becomes a chapel, but a chapel to despair. Even after you complete the Dark Brotherhood questline, Windhelm's people still whisper about their boy. The house remains locked, its ritual circle intact, its aura unchanged. Time passes, but the darkness doesn't fade. The candles still burn, the skull still grins, and the silence still waits. In a land filled with dragons, wars, and Daedric horrors, it is remarkable that one of the most terrifying places in Skyrim is just a quiet house in the middle of a city. A house where a boy once prayed for death and was heard. The Artino residence is sinister not because of what you see inside, but because of what it makes you realise. That sometimes in Skyrim, the greatest evil is not in its monsters, but in its silence. When most players think of Skyrim, they imagine the great cities, Whiterun with its bustling market and Dragon's Reach towering above the plains, Solitude perched majestically on its arching stone, or Windhelm frozen in time, filled with history and strife. But Skyrim is more than its urban centres. Some of its most striking stories lie not in its crowded streets, but in the forgotten margins, the edges of its map where only wind and silence remain. This is one such place, sitting on the far northeastern border of Skyrim, high among the snowdrifts near the mountain passes into Morrowind. It is one of the most desolate and haunting locations in the game. Few players ever find it unless they are deliberately exploring, and fewer still linger long enough to contemplate its meaning. Yet what it represents is profound, a secluded memorial to those who tried to flee Skyrim's turmoil, only to find death waiting for them at the threshold of escape. Refugees' Rest lies at Skyrim's northeastern edge near Windhelm, tucked in the mountains that divide Skyrim from Morrowind. The road to it is not a road at all, but a winding climb, dotted with ice walls and the occasional frost troll. Unlike major destinations in Skyrim, there are no quest markers that draw you here, no NPC guiding you, no carriage or path pointing the way. You must find it on your own, either through curiosity, map scanning, or sheer accident. This geographic seclusion is essential to its character. Skyrim is full of ruins and dungeons, but most are tied to quests or loot that compel exploration. Refugees' Rest is different. It sits like a ghost on the edge of the world. Its very location reinforces its meaning. It was a last stop for desperate people, those fleeing Skyrim's dangers or seeking safety in Morrowind, only to perish just short of their goal. The snowy peaks surrounding the site only heighten the isolation. The wind howls, the visibility drops, and you are reminded that Skyrim's northern reaches are places where nature itself is hostile. If the refugees did not die by violence, the cold itself could have claimed them. The physical details of Refugees' Rest are deceptively simple. At the centre is a broken stone monument, resembling a ruined watchtower or marker, now surrounded by snow and bones. Scattered around are numerous skeletons, many of them lying unceremoniously in the snow, as if abandoned where they fell. There are signs of violence, bloodstains, rusted weapons, and broken shields. It is not the quiet passing of travellers lost to the cold, but a massacre, preserved by the frozen mountain air. There's one journal entry, no notes, no quest to explain exactly what happened here, but the name Refugees' Rest offers enough. These were not soldiers or raiders, they were civilians, people fleeing something. From what? Possibly the chaos of Skyrim's civil war, or coming from Morrowind, or even the eruption of Red Mountain that devastated Morrowind decades before. The exact event doesn't matter so much as the message. These people were seeking safety, and they never reached it. The absence of a narrative explanation only makes the site more powerful, like the Dead Lovers Camp or Refugees' Rest's own sister sites of silent tragedy. Its story is told entirely through environment. What you see is what you get, and what you feel is your own. What makes Refugees' Rest stand out is the silence. Skyrim is rarely still. You can hardly walk a few steps without encountering wolves, bandits, hunters, or random travellers. Even the most ruined tombs echo with the sounds of Draga groaning or skeletons rattling. But Refugees' Rest is different. More often than not, when you arrive, the only sounds are the wind and your own footsteps crunching on the snow. This silence is unsettling because it contrasts so heavily with the violence suggested by the corpses scattered around. The site feels abandoned not just by people, but by time itself. It is this silence that makes it feel secluded and abandoned. The massacre here was total. No survivors remained to bury the dead. No historians came to record the tragedy. No bandits returned to loot what was left. The place is empty, ignored, and forgotten. It exists as a memorial only by accident. Its very name a cruel reminder that there is no rest here, only endless isolation. Refugees' Rest is not only physically secluded, it is also narratively secluded from the rest of Skyrim's stories. You can play hundreds of hours of Skyrim and never know it exists. It is not tied to quests like Helgen, not a ruin of Nordic kings like Labyrinthian, not even a haunted curiosity like Frostflow Lighthouse. It exists outside of the mainstream of the game. This abandonment feels symbolic. Skyrim is full of tragedies, but most are tied to quests or legends that give them meaning. Refugees' Rest, by contrast, is about those who were forgotten. These were not heroes, adventurers, or warriors. They were ordinary people whose deaths were neither glorious nor recorded. Their seclusion, combined with their isolation, makes them more haunting. They remind us that Skyrim is not just a land of epic stories. It is also a land where countless small lives are lost without recognition. While Skyrim is dotted with tragic sights, Refugees' Rest is unique in its combination of seclusion, abandonment, and scale. The Dead Lovers Camp is intimate, telling the story of two people. Frostflow Lighthouse is chilling, tied to a family destroyed by Charus, with journals spelling out their doom. The abandoned prison holds echoes of injustice and forgotten captives. But Refugees' Rest tells the story of many. The number of skeletons strewn across the site suggests more than a dozen of the dead. And unlike Frostflow or the prison, there is barely any written records other than one journal. Their story is somewhat silenced, erased, and left to rot under the snow. This makes Refugees' Rest feel more like a graveyard than a location. It is the only site in Skyrim where you feel like you are walking through a battlefield that was not fought between armies, but against fate itself. From the player's perspective, stumbling upon Refugees' Rest is memorable because it feels so out of place. Skyrim's world is designed to reward exploration, but most rewards come in the form of loot or quests. Here, there is nothing material to gain. The reward is emotional, the unease of finding a forgotten tragedy and the sense of being the only witness left alive. The Dragonborn, a figure destined to alter the fate of the world, is reduced to the role of silent mourner, wandering through the bones of those who could not escape. This shift in perspective is powerful. It reminds the player that Skyrim's story is bigger than the Dragonborn, bigger than dragons, and bigger than quests. It is also the story of ordinary people, and the tragedies that unfold beyond the scope of legend. And yes, there is one chest here, but the reality is it's only concealing the true narrative of it all. In the end, Refugees' Rest is more than a location. It is a meditation on loss, on abandonment, and on stories that are never told. It sits on the edge of Skyrim like a scar, where desperate people met their end and were left to be forgotten. But in being found by the player, this place gains a kind of afterlife. The Dragonborn becomes the sole witness to their tragedy, the one person who pauses long enough to recognize their fate. It is in that act of recognition that the site's power lies. Refugees' Rest is not the grandest or most famous site in Skyrim, but it may be its most haunting. It is the place where seclusion itself becomes a story, where silence speaks louder than dialogue, and where the player is reminded that some tragedies are never meant to be solved. They are simply meant to be remembered. And that is why Refugees' Rest deserves the title as the most abandoned place in all of Skyrim. Some horrors in Skyrim are shouted. You see the dragons, hear the war horns, read the names in your quest log. But others happen quietly, beneath trees, beside water, just far enough off the path that you could walk past them a dozen times and never notice them. One such place lies just southwest of the Guardian Stones, the first blessing point most new players find. From the road-hugging Lake Ilinalta, if you veer into the woods just 50 paces from the trail, you'll find a Talos shrine. But this is not a place of peace. The statue is chipped, the altar is soaked in old blood, bones are strewn across the forest floor, a necromancer stands guard, not an enemy, but a fixture. Always there, always silent until you disturb them. There's no quest, no marker, no journal, no dialogue whatsoever. Only an altar where someone died, someone returned, and someone else made sure they stayed that way. Talos shrines in Skyrim are usually proud, built into cliff sides, marked on maps, visited in secret by Stormcloaks and Nords who defy the white gold Concordat. But not this one. This shrine sits low, not high. Hidden but not revered. It isn't marked on your map, It isn't referenced by the Civil War questlines or Daedric mission. I wouldn't even really call it a good altar. It has no place in any quest, and yet it exists, active, bloody, and wrong. Its proximity to the Guardian Stones makes it all the more unsettling. This is where the Dragonborn's path begins, where you first choose your standing stone after you've left Helgen. Hope, power, and destiny. And just off that road, forgotten under the trees, is a desecrated altar to the god you're not supposed to mention. Someone found it, someone used it, and someone got killed here. And someone died here. The altar itself is stained, chipped by what looks like blade strikes, and weathered by time. A skeleton rests atop of it, arms spread slightly, one leg curled as if it's collapsed mid-struggle. The bones aren't pristine, some are charred, others are cracked. This wasn't a place of burial, this was a place of use. All around the site are scattered remains, ribs, femurs, skull fragments, not placed ceremonially, but flung, dropped, or discarded. One set of bones lies far from the altar, face down in the leaves. Another is slumped against one of the stone pillars. This is not the aftermath of a single death. This is a pattern. And that altar in the middle, it's not for praying, it's for doing. If you approach the altar, you'll encounter the site's only living inhabitant, a novice necromancer. They don't patrol or wander, they don't talk, they don't even seem surprised you found this place. But if you come too close, they attack, immediately, defensively, and with urgency, as if guarding something they were told never to abandon. Killing them gives you no answers. Their belongings are minor, a staff, low-level robes, maybe a soul gem, no notes, no journal, no clues. And yet their presence makes it clear. This place isn't forgotten, it's still being used, or at least maintained. Like a trap no one disarmed. The arrangement of this place feels unfinished. The altar isn't scorched completely, the bones aren't fresh, but they're not ancient either. The necromancer isn't powerful, but they're vigilant. This may have been a summoning ritual, or a binding one, or an execution cloaked in spellcraft. But nothing about this scene says done. It feels like someone walked away mid-spell, or like the magic failed and the bodies were left behind as a warning, or a reminder. And Skyrim doesn't tell you what it's for, it just leaves the room locked and the door open. Lake Ilinalta is more than beautiful scenery. It's a lake full of sunken temples, drowned crypts, and forgotten ruins. To the west is Ilinalta's Deep, a necromancer-infested ruin. Nearby is a sunken shrine, and to the north lies the Lady Stone, another site steeped in mysticism. And then there's this site. It's not tied to any of them. It's not part of a questline or a Radiant encounter. But it echoes the same theme. Ritual gone wrong. Magic cast without oversight. Power sought in silence. Ilinalta doesn't just hold water. It holds secrets as well. But who really performed the ritual? There are no names at this site, no cult banners, no evidence of Daedric worship or a specific faction. But someone did this. Some theories say it's a rogue mage from the College of Winterhold, expelled for unethical practices. Others think it was a Blade's exile, trying to raise fallen allies from the dead. A few speculate it's related to the Mythic Dawn, whose members still hide in pockets across Skyrim. The lack of detail makes the site feel more personal. This isn't a world event, it's someone's mistake. And you walked in after it was too late to undo it. But maybe it was that novice necromancer that you killed to try and get here. But surely they couldn't even pull off something this weird. The Elder Scrolls games are famous for environmental storytelling. Notes, blood trails, overturned cups that suggest struggle. But this site offers none of that. No prompts really, no instructions. Only one journal is nearby, but it doesn't give you any sort of information at all. And in that void, the player is forced to do something rare in Skyrim. Feel uncertain. Most places in Skyrim are knowable. Most places in Skyrim are knowable. Quest markers, loot, objectives. But here, you're left with only emotion. Unease, tension, and curiosity. The site doesn't explain itself, because it doesn't need to. It knows what it's doing to you. What makes this place so terrifying isn't the necromancer. It's the fact that it feels alive, even after you've cleared it. The stones don't glow, the skeleton doesn't rise, nothing explodes. But something lingers. The shape of the ritual, the arrangement of the bones, the way your footsteps seem louder here. The feeling that if you return a few days later, it might look different. Skyrim rarely plays with spaces that watch you back. This one does, quietly. On forums and lore threads, this site does come up quite often. Some players think it's a cut quest site, a leftover from a necromancer plotline that never made it to launch. Others swear it was meant to be part of a Dawnguard subplot, tied to soul trapping or vampire experiments. Still, others believe it's nothing, just a little pocket of ambience. But if you've been here, you know better. It's too precise, too intentional. This wasn't decoration, this was deliberate. And it's that deliberateness, paired with the lack of explanation, that makes it so unforgettable. You leave the ritual site behind. The forest returns to quiet. The road takes you toward Falkreath or Riverwood. But part of you stays. You keep thinking about the bones, the altar, the circle, and how no one else in the world seems to care. No townsfolk reference it, no bounty lists it, no companion questions it. It's as if the ritual was never there at all. But you saw it, and you don't forget things like this. You return to the road, the Guardian stones shimmer in the distance, Lake Ilinalta gleams nearby, but the world carries on. But something in the woods behind you still waits. Bones still scatter the leaves, the altar still stands, and somewhere in the space between spells and memory, the ritual still echoes. Because Skyrim's greatest terrors don't always roar. Sometimes they wait, and sometimes they whisper. Some places in Skyrim are loud. Their stories spill out the moment you step across the threshold. Bandits yell, necromancers chant, dragons scream from mountaintops and leave scorch trails behind them. And then there are quieter places. Places that aren't hidden but still feel unseen. Places where things don't quite add up. Where the land remembers something that the people may have forgotten. Where history hums under your feet but no one speaks about it. Roekstead is one of those places. You'll find it to the west of Whiterun, past the river and the ridges, nestled in the Golden Plains. It has an inn, a few farms, and some familiar names. There are even a couple of quests, if you happen to meet the right people. It looks just like another dot on the map. But stay a little longer, listen a little closer, because the longer you stand in Roekstead, the stranger it starts to feel. And the more you'll wonder what's really going on here. Roekstead appears ordinary at first glance. A cluster of homes, a small inn, a few NPCs tending to crops and livestock. It's the kind of place you might ride past on your way to Markarth, barely noticing it exists at all. And Skyrim doesn't mind if you ignore it. The game offers no formal reason to stop here, only for a quest. No guild sends you here, the town is content to remain on the fringe, both geographically and narratively. But that absence, the narrative silence, is exactly why people have been talking about Roekstead for years. Because despite its unassuming nature, the deeper you dig, the stranger it becomes. The town takes its name from Roek, a former Imperial soldier who says he purchased the land and turned it from barren waste into fertile fields. According to the UESP, Roek fought in the Great War, was injured and healed by his friend. After the war, the two of them settled here. Simple enough, right? Except Roekstead is ancient. It's mentioned in the bard's song Ragnar the Red, a traditional ballad that predates the events of Skyrim by generations. Even more strangely, the town is referenced in two much older texts as well, with one of them being the Atlas of Dragons. The former refers to Roic steading in the first era thousands of years ago, and yet Roic is alive, healthy, and just here. The optimistic view is that this is a coincidence, that Roic is a recycled name, which it could be. But this is Skyrim, where names rarely repeat without reason, and timelines usually hold together with mythic precision. That dissonance between Roic the man and Roicstead, the ancient location, is unsettling. Roicstead isn't just old, it's miraculously productive. Dialogue from various NPCs confirm that the land around Roicstead used to be barren. The holdings of Jarl Geirlund describe it as nothing impressive. Yet somehow, it's the most fertile farmland in all of the Whiterun hold. One NPC even jokes that Roicstead could start exporting its soil. Farming is also rarely mentioned outside of Roicstead, and nowhere else in the game boasts this kind of prosperity. How did a town with no known blessings, no special location, no divine favour, and no apparent irrigation suddenly bloom into the headbasket of the region? Magic, maybe? Alchemy? Or perhaps a pact? When you step into the homes of Roicstead's residents, you'll find some strange things. Soul gems are placed on shelves and tables, which are odd trinkets for simple farmers, right? In Roic's manor, a copy of the book Spirit of the Daedra sits unguarded. There are no obvious mages living in the town, no alchemists and no temples. So why the magic paraphernalia? There's also an odd conversation with Roic's daughter, in some playthroughs depending on schedules. She speaks to a man who speaks quietly of magic. He warns the girl not to tell the others. It's a moment that can easily be missed, but when paired with the Daedric book, the soul gems, and the uncanny prosperity of the town, it begins to look a lot less like coincidence and more like remnants of something kept hidden. If you've ever played Skyrim even once, you remember Lockyer. He's the thief from Roicstead, introduced in the game's opening cart ride. However, Lockyer dies before the prologue ends. But here's the strange part. No one in Roicstead remembers him, even though he hails from there. No NPCs mention him, there's no house that once belonged to him, not even a passing reference. Even more tantalizing, a cutscene from Bethesda's Creation Kit demo once showed the developers editing a location called Lockyer's Tomb. It was fully modelled, fully fleshed out, but never used. Whether it was scrapped, unfinished, or meant for later DLC, the message is clear. There was meant to be more to this story. There's a theory first floated on Reddit and later picked up by YouTubers like Fizzy, that Roicstead is a Daedric cult in disguise. The theory does fit too well. The soul gems, the Daedra text, the suspiciously fertile land, the secrecy of magic training, the disappearance of Lockyer, the oddly elderly residents who never age. What if the town made a deal with the Daedric Prince of Pestilence and Order, or Mephala, who thrives on secrets and manipulation? The people of Roicstead may have battered their souls, or their memories, and if that's true, it would explain why no one remembers Lockyer, why the town folk live in ignorance, and a deal was made, and the silence was part of the price. Roicstead doesn't shout. It doesn't demand your attention like Solitude's courtyards or Windhelm's gates. It speaks in whispers, through the rustle of the wheat fields, the creak of wooden carts, and the low murmur of farmers tending their land. The inn is calm, the streets are empty, even the people speak as if they're trying not to wake something ancient beneath the soil. There are quests here, if you know where to look. A young man dreams of becoming a hero. A few deliveries pass through the village, but none of it breaks the spell. The tone stays the same, measured, restraint, almost reverent, as though the entire town is holding its breath. What makes Roekstead feel mysterious isn't what happens here, it's what doesn't as well. No one talks about the Dragon Mound just beyond the ridge. No one mentions Haygraven Shrine nearby. No one seems disturbed by the soul gems in their neighbours' homes. They just till the land, eat their meals, and sleep in peace. And that silence, the choice to carry on without question, is louder than any shout from a dragon. Roekstead is not empty. It's quiet. And in Skyrim, quiet can mean danger, or a secret waiting to be kept. There's a certain kind of place in Skyrim, a place that was built, populated, maybe even scripted, and then seemingly forgotten. Cut content, internal decisions, lore shifts. Whatever the cause, the result is the same. A place that feels almost finished, but not quite. Roekstead is that place. And that's why people are still talking about it over a decade later. Roekstead is easy to miss. It doesn't call attention to itself. It doesn't throw a dragon in your path. It doesn't offer glory or gold, but it lingers. It sits in the back of your mind like an itch. A question without an answer. A town that should mean nothing and yet means everything. In a game that explains so much, Roekstead stands apart. It keeps its secrets. It buries its truth in old books, strange artifacts, and quiet homes filled with unnatural life. Because sometimes the most mysterious places in Skyrim aren't the ones full of monsters. They're the ones that just sit there, smiling, pretending that they're normal, when everything around them says otherwise. There are a lot of cities, towns, and villages in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, each with its own history, culture, and problems. But one city stands out as a particularly lawless, corrupt, and crime-ridden city: Riften. Unlike Solitude, Whiterun, or Windhelm, where local leadership at least makes an effort to uphold the rule of law, Riften feels like a place where crime isn't just a problem, it's a part of the city's foundation. At first glance, Riften might seem like a charming lakeside settlement nestled in the southeast corner of Skyrim, surrounded by golden autumn trees and resting on the edge of the massive Lake Onrich. But taking a closer look, and you'll notice something unsettling. Guards openly admit that the city is overrun with corruption, merchants live in fear of extortion, and the city's most powerful organisation isn't just Jarl's Court, but the infamous Thieves' Guild. But just how bad is Riften's crime problem? And why does it seem like no one is doing anything about it? To answer that, we need to take a deep dive into Riften's seedy underbelly, its criminal organisations, corrupt officials, and the city's overall lawlessness, and ultimately figure out the true crime rate within this Gotham-fueled city. One of the most obvious indicators of Riften's crime problem is the overwhelming influence of the Thieves' Guild. While crime exists in every hold of Skyrim, Riften is unique in that an entire guild of criminals operate openly, controlling the city's economy and imitating its citizens. The Thieves' Guild isn't just some back alley gang stealing apples from market stalls. It's well-structured, patriarchal organisation with a leadership council, financial interests, and a long history of criminal activity. Walk into Riften's marketplace and within minutes, someone will try to pressure you into shaking down a shopkeeper on behalf of the guild. The guild even has its own secret hideout, the Ragged Flagon, a dark and damp tavern located beneath the city in the Ratway. Even the city's official leader is, at best, indifferent to the Thieves' Guild's activities, and at worst, actively cooperating with them. Many of the guards are either corrupt or too afraid to stand up to the guild, and merchants pay regular protection fees just to avoid trouble. It's not just about theft either. The guild engages in extortion, bribery, blackmail, and even assassinations if necessary. In most cities, a group like this would be relentlessly hunted down by authorities. But in Riften, they are the authorities. If there's one person who embodies Riften's corruptions, it's Maven Blackbriar. She isn't technically the Jarl, but she might as well be. The Blackbriar family is wealthy, influential, and has deep ties to the Thieves' Guild and other criminal organisations. Maven is untouchable. Guards refuse to investigate her activities, and even Riften's Jarl, Layla Lawgiver, defers to her judgment. Maven's Blackbriar meadery is a front for her illicit dealings, and she has been known to eliminate anyone who crosses her. But it doesn't stop at mere intimidation. Maven has the Dark Brotherhood on speed dial, so to speak. Step out of line and you may just find yourself on their kill list. Her involvement with both the Thieves Guild and the Dark Brotherhood makes her one of the most dangerous figures in Skyrim. What makes Maven's presence even more disturbing is that, unlike typical criminals, she doesn't hide in the shadows. She operates in broad daylight, conducting business deals with nobles and holding sway over the Jarl's court. If Skyrim had a mafia queen, it would be her. One of the most glaring signs of Riften's lawlessness is the attitude of its city guards. In most of Skyrim, guards patrol the streets with a sense of authority, reminding citizens that order must be maintained. In Riften, however, things are different. Talk to any guard and you'll quickly notice their tone. These aren't guards who take pride in enforcing the law. They are either bribed, threatened, or too afraid to challenge the criminal empire that runs in Riften. Even more bizarre, if you get caught committing crimes in Riften, the punishment isn't particularly severe. Unlike the Silver Blood Run prison in Markarth, where you're thrown into a horrifying underground mine, Riften's prison feels almost optional. Many criminals continue their activities as if law enforcement is just a minor inconvenience. Most Skyrim cities have a few back alleys where criminals operate, but Riften takes it a step further. It has an entire underground network known as the Ratway. The Ratway is a series of tunnels beneath Riften where criminals, beggars, and outlaws hide from the authorities. Or, more accurately, from each other, since the authorities don't seem to care. It's one of the most dangerous places in Skyrim. While the Thieves Guild operates out of the Ragged Flagon, the deeper levels of the Ratway house even more disturbing figures, including Esbern, the paranoid Blades member hiding from Talmor. His presence suggests that even high-profile fugitives know Riften is a good place to disappear. No other city in Skyrim has such an elaborate and openly dangerous criminal hideout. The Ratway isn't just a place for thieves to gather. It's a symbol of how deeply crime is embedded into Riften's infrastructure. For all of its corruption and crime, Riften still has ordinary citizens trying to live their lives. Shopkeepers, fishermen, dock workers, and travellers pass through, trying their best to avoid trouble. But fear is everywhere. Merchants like Bolly and Algrim live under constant pressure from the Thieves Guild. The Temple of Mara, supposedly a beacon of love and peace, exists in stark contrast to the city's crime-ridden streets. Unlike cities such as Whiterun, where the people feel a sense of community, Riften's citizens seem isolated, paranoid, and beaten down by the reality of their city's condition. However, putting this information into numbers in a video game city like Riften is tricky. But if we approach it like a real-world city, we can make some rough estimates. First, let's establish a population count. Based on the number of NPCs and a reasonable assumption about unnamed citizens, Riften likely has 70 to 80 residents. This is excluding transient visitors and guards. Now let's consider the number of known criminals. The Thieves Guild has at least 15 to 20 active members. The Blackbriar family controls much of the city's corruption and engages in illegal activity, adding another 5 to 10 individuals. The Ratway is home to a mix of fugitives, bandits, and cutthroats, likely numbering 10 to 15 more criminals. Corrupt guards make up a portion of the city's law enforcement, potentially 5 to 10 out of the city's entire guard force. With this data, we can estimate that around 40 to 50 people in Riften are directly involved in crime, meaning at least 50 to 60% of the city's population is crime affiliated in some way. In short, Riften's crime rate is not just high, it's astronomical. If Skyrim had any kind of functional justice system, the city would likely be classified as a lawless zone, unfit for normal habitation. But the real question is, why has no one done anything about Riften's crime problem? Well, the Imperial Legion and Stormcloaks are too focused on the Civil War to intervene. The Thieves Guild and Maven Blackbriar ensure that anyone who tries to clean up Riften doesn't last long. And the Jarl's court is ineffective, either due to incompetence or corruption. The people of Riften are also too scared or too used to the crime to resist. Ultimately, Riften's crime problem persists because crime isn't just a part of the city, it is the city. Unlike the honourable warriors of Whiterun, or the strict enforcers of Solitude, Riften's leadership has allowed crime to thrive, shaping the city's identity into what it is today. Riften is, without a doubt, the most crime-ridden city in Skyrim. While most cities have thieves and criminals lurking in the shadows, Riften's entire economic and political system revolves around crime. From the Thieves Guild and the Ratway to Maven Blackbriar's stranglehold on power, Riften is a city where the law has been completely undermined. Whether the Dragonborn chooses to clean it up or join in on the corruption, one thing is clear. Riften isn't just a city with a crime problem. Riften is a crime problem. When people talk about Skyrim, they mention dragons, shouts, ancient tombs, and heroism. But beneath the Nordic snow and glory of the Dragonborn's path lies something far darker, something more intimate, personal, quietly terrifying. Skyrim is full of the strange, the unspoken, and the morally rotten. Because for every Radiant fetch quest or bandit camp, there's a story that's more than dangerous. It's disturbing. Not just in what it asks you to do, but in how it lingers after you've done it. This is a descent into 5 of those stories. 5 quests that leave you changed. 5 pieces of Skyrim's hidden heart that remind you in a world filled with monsters, sometimes the worst thing you'll face is yourself. From the outside, it looks like any old Markarth home. Just one more abandoned building clinging to the city's craggy edge. Then Vigilant Tyrannus waves you over. He asks you for your help investigating a haunted house. You agree, you expect spiders or bandits, or something else. What you get is Molag Bal. As soon as you enter, things shift. Furniture flies across the room. The Vigilant panics. You descend into the basement, and that's when the Daedrus speaks. Molag Bal, the Daedric prince of domination, enslavement, and suffering, traps you, forces you to torture a man chained to a blood-stained altar. And he watches, and he enjoys it. But what makes this quest truly disturbing isn't the violence, it's how quietly it happens. How your choice is reduced to do as you're told or die. And the game never gives you a way out. No third option, no mercy. You just leave the house with a powerful mace. But you also leave with blood on your hands. The blood of the old priest and the blood of the Vigilant. And the awareness that in this story, you were never the hero. Windhelm is cold even in daylight, but its real chill creeps in through the alleys. At night, you find a body in the graveyard, a woman murdered. A city guard explains it's not the first time. You're dragged into the role of the amateur detective. The tools of the killer, bone swords, butcher knives, strange magical implements. It becomes clear that this isn't a simple crime, is it? It's necromancy, maybe. Someone is harvesting body parts. You suspect the court mage, the steward, then a meek, awkward man who seems like he couldn't harm a fly. And that's where the quest twists into something more uncomfortable, because you could get it wrong. If you rush the investigation, you can arrest the wrong man, and the real killer may go free, and then the city of Windhelm carries on. But even if you catch the true culprit, what's left is unsettling. A man who lived among the people, walking their streets pretending to be normal, while building a corpse bride in secret. It's not a fight, it's a reminder that evil doesn't always hide in crypts. Sometimes it lives in the spare room down the hall. The people of Dawnstar can't sleep. They're plagued by nightmares so vivid they tremble during the day, and some even stop eating, others stop working, and fear curls in every corner of every conversation. And then you meet Erenda, a former priest of the Daedric Prince of Dreams, Illusions, and Twisted Memories. He believes the source of the nightmares lies inside Nightcaller Temple, once a sanctuary, now a Daedric ruin. You travel there together, but then what follows is a descent into the mind's worst fears. The temple is filled with dreamers, frozen in time by a magical device known as the miasma. You relive Erenda's memories. You uncover betrayals, wars, and Daedric pacts made under the illusion of faith. The climax comes not in combat, but in choice. The Daedric Prince demands you to kill him, claiming he plans to betray you, the man you travelled to this temple with. He begs for trust, and you must decide, kill a man who helped you based on the word of a Daedra, or defy the prince and risk corruption. But there is no perfect ending, just realization that trust, like dreams, can be twisted until you don't know what's real anymore. You hear rumours that the Hall of the Dead is locked. You ask about it. The priest gives you somewhat of a vague answer, something about a smell. Investigating further, you meet Iola, a woman with calm eyes and a soft voice. She tells you the truth, that the hall is haunted because someone's been eating the dead. Then she says something even worse, that it was her, and that you should try it too. You're invited to a hidden shrine deep within a cave, where a cult of Namira, the Daedric Prince of Decay and Filth, gathers to feast on corpses. Your task? Bring someone to be the meal. Not a stranger, but a friend. The very priest who asked you to investigate. You can refuse, but if you go through with it, you become a part of it. You sit at the table, you eat, and Skyrim rewards you with the Ring of Namira, enhancing your ability to feed on the dead. The game actually doesn't punish you, and no one finds out. But you will, every time you walk past a meal, every time you see a body, and wonder if it's worth more dead than buried. The Dark Brotherhood questline starts simply. A rumour. A boy named Aventus Arantino, alone in Windhelm, performing the Black Sacrament. You find him. He's trying to summon assassins to kill a cruel head mistress. And you do it. Then, after that very moment, the Dark Brotherhood contacts you. The very next time you lay to rest, you'll wake up in an abandoned shack. But what follows is a slow descent into one of Skyrim's most fascinating and disturbing narratives. You become an agent of death, paid to kill, rewarded for creativity, celebrated for cruelty. Targets range from corrupt nobles to innocent beggars. One mission even asks you to murder a bride on her wedding day, not for justice, but spectacle. You sit in a room and kill strangers while they sleep. You poison mead meant for a king. You slit throats on a stage while applause roars around you. And when you think you understand the Brotherhood, it falls apart. You're betrayed from within. Your sanctuary is destroyed. The people you trusted are butchered. And in the end, you wear the mantle of listener, a servant to an unmummified corpse who whispers in silence. What's disturbing here isn't just the blood. It's how normal it starts to feel, until you no longer ask who the target is, just how much they are worth. Skyrim gives you power, but it rarely tells you how to use it. These quests don't challenge your stats, they challenge your comfort. They take you into crypts and cathedrals, dreamscapes and cult circles. They offer you rewards you shouldn't want, and ask questions you can't answer cleanly. Will you torture for a god, kill for a paycheck, eat a man for a ring? Skyrim doesn't judge you. That's what makes it worse. Because in a land torn by dragons and war, it's not always the monsters on the mountain that linger in your mind. It's the choices you made quietly, in the shadows. In the grim and frostbitten world of the Elder Scrolls Skyrim, necromancy is no laughing matter. It is a forbidden art, a manipulation of the sacred balance between life and death. To most, the practice is abhorrent, an act reserved for the darkest corners of Tamriel. Yet in this world of undead horrors, Daedric cults and vampire covens, there exists one figure whose infamy transcends horror and dips into the bizarre: the Poultry Reanimator. Unlike the King of Worms or the powerful necromancers of the College of Winterhold, the Poultry Reanimator's story is not one of ambition, conquest, or the pursuit of forbidden knowledge. It is one of absurdity, a case so strange it borders on parody. And yet it reflects something deeply human about Skyrim's relationship with magic, madness, and meaning. But while other necromancers raise armies of the dead, the Poultry Reanimator chooses to raise chickens. And in that act, Skyrim's dark tone fractures, revealing humour, tragedy, and mystery in equal measure. To understand the legend of the Poultry Reanimator, one must first understand Skyrim's strange relationship with chickens. In most of the province, chickens are sacred, not in a religious sense, but in a cultural one. To harm or steal a chicken is to commit an unforgivable act. Guards will kill over it, bounties will be placed. The killing of a single chicken can unleash more fury than slaying a Jarl's son. So when word spread that a necromancer had not only killed chickens, but reanimated them, Skyrim's people reacted with equal parts of horror and confusion. The Poultry Reanimator, whose real name, if they ever had one, is lost to history, was said to dwell on the outskirts of civilization, practicing forbidden arts in some remote cave or ruin. Unlike most necromancers who filled their lairs with human skeletons and corpses, this one was surrounded by the undead forms of squawking, clucking chickens, an unholy parody of barnyard life. To some, it was a comedy, to others it was blasphemy, and to a few, particularly those who understood the deeper lore of necromancy, it was something far more unsettling, a sign of madness taken to its logical extreme. But who really was the Poultry Reanimator? There is no questline dedicated to them. Why would there be? There's no journal revealing their thoughts, no official record. And yet players who stumble across necromantic scenes involving reanimated poultry, or find hints of the act scattered through Skyrim's random encounters, inevitably piece together the myth. Some believe the Poultry Reanimator was once an apprentice of Phineas Gester, or another necromancy sympathetic mage from the College of Winterhold. Banished for unethical experimentation, they turned to forbidden research. But unlike others, their ambition was not grand. They were not trying to achieve immortality or to conquer death. Instead, they seemed fascinated by the process itself, the strange interplay of life and energy, of soul and form. But why chickens? Perhaps because chickens are harmless, perhaps because they are plentiful, or perhaps because, to a mind slowly unraveling under the weight of obsession, the difference between a corpse and a carcass becomes literally meaningless. In this way, the Poultry Reanimator represents a curious reflection of Skyrim's darker themes, that in a world where death is constant, even the grotesque can become ordinary. Necromancy in Skyrim is not a simple spell. It is a philosophy. It asks questions that even the divines fear. Was it the soul? Can it be owned, borrowed, or broken? The Poultry Reanimator's particular brand of necromancy turns this philosophy upside down. Rather than confronting death through grandeur or terror, they do so through absurdity. Imagine a ritual circle in a cave, candles burning, runes glowing, soul gems humming with trapped energy. And in the centre, not a fallen warrior or a corpse from a battlefield, but the limp body of a chicken. Then, as the spell takes hold, the chicken jerks upright, glowing with blue necromantic energy. It clucks, walks, perhaps even lays an unholy egg. It's ridiculous, but it's also deeply unsettling, because it reveals how far a human mind can wander when isolation and obsession take hold. To others, chickens are food. To the Poultry Reanimator, they are subjects, companions, and even proof that death can be undone. To understand how truly bizarre the Poultry Reanimator is, one must understand how necromancy is perceived in Skyrim. Unlike in Cyrodiil or Morrowind, where the practice is more openly discussed or integrated into culture, Skyrim's people view necromancy with visceral disgust. It is outlawed, shunned, and feared. Most Nords revere death as sacred, the passage to Sovngarde, a warrior's paradise. To disturb the dead is to deny them their eternal reward. Thus, necromancers are treated not just as criminals, but as heretics. That makes the Poultry Reanimator's existence even more absurd. They weren't just defying divine law, they were defiling it for poultry. The sheer absurdity of the act made them infamous. The Poultry Reanimator wasn't terrifying like the vampires of Movarth's lair, or tragic like Sinding the werewolf. They were something else entirely, a living joke that nonetheless carried the moral weight of blasphemy. This tale seems uniquely bizarre, and yet Skyrim is a land built on countless such strangeness. It's a world where sorrow, mystery, and absurdity constantly intertwine. For every grand fortress and noble tomb, there exists some lonely clearing or forgotten camp where small human tragedies unfold unseen. One of the most quietly haunting of these is Dead Lovers Camp, a remote campsite hidden in the wilderness, where two corpses lie side by side among empty bottles and cold ashes. I've already done a video on it, but there is no quest tied to it, no dialogue, no explanation. The scene simply exists frozen in time. Were they lovers who chose death together, victims of an attack? The game never really tells you unless you dig deeper. In this way, the Poultry Reanimator and Dead Lovers Camp share a strange kinship. Both are tiny stories that whisper something immense. Both transform Skyrim's wilderness into a stage for unspoken tragedy. And both, though utterly different in tone, one absurd, one melancholy, illustrate Bethesda's fascination with the human side of its world. The Poultry Reanimator's chickens, animated by necromantic energy, are absurd symbols of defiance against death. The lovers lying together forever are quiet symbols of acceptance. One tries to overcome morality through madness, the other yields to it in sorrow. These two spaces, one filled with dark humour, the other with heartbreaking silence, form two halves of Skyrim's soul. There is almost a poetic symmetry between these two forgotten corners of Skyrim. The Poultry Reanimator stands for defiance in the face of meaningless, the lovers represent surrender to it. The necromancer, through grotesque humour, tries to master death, only to be consumed by it. The lovers, through devotion, embrace death together, and in doing so achieve a strange kind of peace. One is drenched in dark comedy, the other in tragedy, and yet both are distinctly Skyrim, quiet, off the beaten path, and entirely optional. That optionality is part of the magic. You could play Skyrim for hundreds of hours and never encounter either. They exist not to reward or punish the player, but to haunt them, to populate the world with mystery and emotion that feels spontaneous rather than scripted. Together, the Poultry Reanimator's place and Dead Lovers Camp form a kind of emotional compass for the game, one pointing towards madness, the other towards melancholy. Both show that Skyrim's true soul isn't just in dragons or war, it's in the quietest absurdities and its softest heartbreaks. In that way, they elevate the game beyond fantasy. They make it more human. Both are ultimately reflections of the same truth, that in Skyrim, beauty and horror, laughter and grief coexist in the same frozen breath. And perhaps that is what makes the world of Skyrim endure long after its dragons have fallen silent. Its ability to hold both absurdity and sincerity in perfect balance. You never know what waits around the next bend, a corpse clutching a love letter, or a chicken reanimated by dark magic. That uncertainty, that blend of awe and unease is what keeps players exploring. Because somewhere, deep in the snow and silence, Skyrim's strangest stories are still unfolding, and the Poultry Reanimator and the lovers, though long gone, still whisper through its wilderness. Two tiny echoes of a world that never quite makes sense, but always feels real. Somewhere on the rocks, the blue glow of necromantic light still flickers. A chicken clucks in the darkness, and the laughter of a mad mage echoes faintly through the hills. In that moment, you realise, perhaps madness and genius were never that far apart.